Great to have you all here. All right, let's get started. Although more people keep coming in, which we love to see. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Badix. I am co-director of the San Francisco Disability Cultural Center. We are a program of Elsie and Lily Cox, Haven of Hope, and our work is made possible with financial contributions from the City of San Francisco's Human Service Agency's Department of Disability and Aging Services. Just some logistics things before we dive in. We will use chat for this event. If that poses a hurdle for you, you can go to video settings, select accessibility, and unclick the box for public in meeting chat has been received. We're also going to read key things in the chat aloud, so if you can't access that space, you'll still be able to know what's happening there. To participate in today's program, you can turn on your video or you can turn off your video if that doesn't feel as cozy for you. You can use chat or emoji buttons. You can use the raise hand function if you want to ask a question. And you can ask your questions in the chat. We'll have some Q&A time at the end. And Rae is going to lead us through a lot of stuff. So if it's something time sensitive to one of them, we can get it sooner too. If you need to ask your question a different way, you can either send a direct message to me. Again, that's Emily. I'll change my name so it says Emily. Or you can email access@disabilityculturalcenter.org. This event is being recorded. We'd like to share it on YouTube so folks who couldn't join us in the middle of the day still have access to the resources and all the knowledge we're going to get. If that's uncomfortable for you posing a question, it's okay to remain anonymous. You can rename yourself, or you could send a message before you come on screen if you'd like us to pause recording. So we got the logistics things out of the way. I am now very excited to introduce you all to Rae Lanzerotti. We've been really fortunate to have Rae's artwork on display at the Disability Cultural Center for the last couple of months, and it has been so exciting and cool to have people come into the space and specifically say, do you have anything that's tactile if they're blind or low vision, and be able to say, yes, we do right now, thanks to Rae. But also just to have this really exciting stuff that has these multiple layers of what makes it exciting has just been what we dreamed up for the kind of things we want to get to display. So, I am really excited that Rae is coming to share their expertise with us today. I first started working on stuff with Rae when they were doing an accessible comic for thinking about blind and low vision access. And within like a couple of weeks of getting started, they had already prototyped it in 10 different ways and had completely dived in. So I know we are in very good hands with our workshop leader. And with that, I'll pass it to you. And thank you so much, Rae, for sharing with us today.
Wow. Thank you, Emily. And hello, everybody. Thank you to the interpreters and to the San Francisco Disability Cultural Center for hosting this and for everyone who's here. Let's see. So I will start with saying I'm in San Francisco. I'm a white, non-binary, genderqueer artist in midlife with silvering hair. I am wearing an eye patch. I'm partially sighted. And as Emily said, I've been working in art mediums, mostly related to printmaking and book arts, with a few forays into the sculptural. And I'm fairly new as an artist. It started because of becoming disabled. And so everything has really been happening quickly and in parallel as I've been figuring out various ways to make art more accessible, including tactile. So my goal for our hour together is to offer you a few ideas to spark your own creativity and play. And I love it that there are so many people here, and a lot of people responded to this offering because it shows me there's a lot of interest in tactile art, and I want to encourage that. So I thought we would start by gathering some collective wisdom and asking those of you who are able and want to put into the chat your answer to how do you define tactile art? So how do you define tactile art? And, I was thinking about this. It could be sensations that come to mind, or shapes, or it could be really anything. I'm curious if anyone is willing to jump in there and answer. And Emily will voice any of those responses from the chat about how you would, when you think of tactile art, what comes to mind? Or if you have made tactile art, what has that been like for you? So, and we'll just, we'll give that a moment here. And, another way to approach this, I'm going to add on actually here. So for some of you, if you haven't yet answered the first question, maybe this one will appeal to you. What is tactile art that is accessible? So what is tactile and accessible art? So we'll just get kind of a jumble of ideas here. Emily, I don't know if anything is coming through yet. Do you want to jump in and give some highlights? I'd love that.
Sure. Well, first I'll share that somebody said they're a first timer here, and that's always really exciting to us when people are, what brings people out to the first time to the DCC. And somebody else is joining from way north in Humboldt. But to your prompt, art can be made with touch only and or witnessed with touch only. Art that can be enjoyed through touch. Descriptive poetry full of texture and painted scenes with words that touch the sense. Art that invites participants to co-experience it through the means of production. Tactile art makes me think of art having textile, perhaps with found objects or maybe with layers. Art you're not allowed to touch, but encouraged to explore. Sorry, I messed that up. I was like, that doesn't make sense. Art you're not only allowed to touch, but encouraged to explore. I apologize, Sophie. And art that physically touches, engages with you back. Oh man, I could keep going. These are great. Yeah, that gives a good sampling of what's coming in.
Oh, thank you. Although I was a little bit like, keep going, keep going. I love these points. And I'm going to say some of the things that I heard. Touch to be enjoyed. I love the word co-experienced. That's cool. Texture, our senses. Someone wrote found objects, and I'll be talking about that a little bit, showing some examples. Layers. Other words I heard were explore and engage. So thank you, everyone. So yes, and I wanted to say before we get into the materials that I have been playing with a balance, which I describe to myself as making accessible, tactile art that is both legible and pleasurable. And in what Emily just voiced for us, there was a lot around actually both of those things. And I definitely heard the pleasurable. So I'll say a little bit more about what I mean. So to me, legible means actually literally able to be read, right? So for example, with Braille, or being able to recognize a shape, like a square feels like a square, or a star feels like a star. And in that sense, it's representational. So it's an outline or a letter or a line or a series of dots that can be recognized. And to me, that's an important question about accessibility. And it being legible, especially for something like a zine or a comic, which is where I started this whole pathway of experimentation. And then with pleasurable, I don't feel like it's an either or, it's definitely an and, right? Legible and pleasurable. That something is interesting to touch, that it is somatic, it is beautiful. And so, how can it be both? Emphasizing an accessible function and also something that's enjoyable. So, with that, and as Emily said, we'll have time for questions at the end and observations. I wanted to switch to talking about materials. I wanted to devote most of our time to materials. And most of these are things that I've used, actually all of them are things that I've used for forms from zines to larger sculptural assemblages and installations, like the one that's at the Disability Cultural Center until the end of June. Some of these materials are specialized, and I'll talk about those second. First, I want to talk about more available materials, found materials, things you might locate at a hardware store or around where you live. And an example of what I mean by available is on a plane ride recently, I took a piece of scrap paper and figured out how many textures I could find with it, or how many textures I could make with just a single piece of scrap paper. And as you are here listening, if you want to find a piece of paper where you are right now and check that out for yourself while I'm talking, that would be great. You can crunch, fold, tear, ball it up, create layers with it. Maybe if you have adhesives, you could glue or tape it onto a piece of paper. I was sort of surprised by how much I could do during that plane ride with just one piece of scrap paper. All right, so here comes a technological challenge for me, hopefully not for you. I'm going to switch my camera, see if I could do this, to the workspace. First by stopping the video on my face. Hopefully you could still hear my words, and turning on the lights, moving my laptop so I can still engage with you. And voila, here I am at the workspace.
Rae, just a quick interruption. You can leave the camera on your space if you want. We have both spotlit, so we can see both at the same time.
Oh, I don't know if I want
Okay.
folks seeing the back of my head, but
Oh, it's
thank
the back of
you.
your head. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it might be interesting, but I literally just turned around. My setup here is pretty wild because I'm
Got
in a
it.
small space. Yeah. And this
Yeah.
is everybody, this is my first time doing this kind of demo with the multiple cameras and stuff. So thank you for being here for that. And if there's any technological issues with it, please speak up or say, send something in the chat so we can address it. All right. Hello. So as I was saying, the first set of materials, which I have laid out here and will bring up to the camera closer and try and describe for you as well. And Emily, please jump in to help me out if needed. Thank you. You might find these nearby in your home or at the hardware store. There was a whole period of time where I was just like haunting the neighborhood hardware store for things that I thought would be fun to touch and include in art pieces. For the most part, these are low budget and fun to play with. They're not necessarily made for artistic use, and I encourage you to search wherever you're located, right, for creative reuse of materials. And I've used most of these in more abstract pieces. The first thing I wanted to share with you are, see if I'm holding those in the right place. Everything is kind of upside down and backwards for me. These are bump dots. And actually these particular ones are disability access tools for people who are blind and partially sighted like me. They can be used for locating and labeling objects. They come in different sizes, shapes, colors, all of that. And they're really fun because you can just peel and stick for a variety of textures and purposes. One of my favorite things is to use disability access tools artistically to find new applications for them that are creative as well as practical. So that's item number one. I also like playing with felt dots. This is a set of kind of fuzzy circles that can be used for protecting furniture. That's how I've used them in the past. And then Velcro dots, which are sold as an art supply and have many different uses. I just learned about Velcro dots in the last couple of years. And now I like them because there's one side that's scratchy and has kind of a sound to it, and one side that's really smooth and fuzzy. So that's an example of other things. And what I like about these, as well as the bump dots, is that they are self-adhering. So you would just peel off the backing and then you can I create all kinds of patterns with them, as well as using them for indicators and signals of things in my zines, kind of like a touch here, read here, that kind of thing. Okay, moving right along. Tapes, different kind of tapes. I have a big pile of them here. Some of my favorite tapes are metallic, which has a glint to it, as well as being very smooth and cool to the touch. This is an aluminum tape. I think this was a hardware store find. They come in different widths. I've got some foam tape. I think initially this is a very narrow gray, puffy, not super puffy, tape that was originally designed for insulation, like window insulation, something like that. It's really squishy and also smooth. I've got a much thicker, taller, darker foam tape. This is a black, sponge-like tape that has a self-adhesive. Actually, everything I've shown you so far. You could peel off the backing and stick that to something. This has a lot more squish to it. When I push down on it, it's very soft and squishy. And in some abstract pieces that I've used this in, it creates height. So if I were to have this next to, for example, the thinner foam tape, one would be very low and the other would be very high, relatively speaking. And it would create kind of a topography, right, as well as a difference in texture. And then I think the last tape I dug out of my collection is sandpaper tape. So sandpaper comes in all different grains. So you can get smaller, less rough, and larger, more rough grains. This one in particular, you can peel the backing off of and stick to things. Actually, really love sandpaper, again, in contrast with something squishy like a foam, or to cut shapes out of that. I believe there's a piece up at the San Francisco Disability Cultural Center right now that has cut out flowers using sandpaper, which is kind of like a contrast between the shape of a flower and then the really rough feeling, scratchy feeling of the sandpaper tape. Okay, so I showed you the foil tape. I'm going through these fairly quickly because I want to spend more time on some of the more elaborate methods that I've used as well. But actually, all of these are so great to play with that I don't want to give them short shrift. Again, if there's any questions about them at the end, we can come back to it. If there's anything that I'm missing right now, somebody please speak up. I mentioned the foil tape. I also really love playing with foil, again, because it's got so much texture to it just on its own, but it's easy to emboss or deboss different shapes. So making different areas that stick out or stick in, lines. And of course, it's also reflective and bright, which is fun. This is I'm holding up an art foil specifically designed for artistic use. I think I got this at an art store. It's a little bit thicker. It can be molded. I'm holding up a box that I made with that art foil. It's got some designs kind of embossed into it. It's two-sided for whatever texture you're making. I've made some little books with it. This is actually from foil rubbings that I did on the sidewalk, utility covers and so on, that I put together into a little book. It's probably 2 inches or 3 inches by 3 inches, something like that. And I use the metallic tape around the edges to deal with the issue of the sharpness of the edges. I have this last example of foil, just again as more of a found object. This is the top of a yogurt container. I've made some, what's that called? Like a mobile out of these. They're really fun to put together because they make sounds as well when they hit each other. But this is an example of another material that you might find around your house that's fun to crunch or fold or combine with other complementary materials for a tactile effect. All right. Few more things here that I wanted to share with you. I'm like, okay, we got through the tapes, we got through the foil. There is,
Rae, can I ask
yes,
one question while you're on the foil rather than
yeah,
to the end?
definitely.
Someone said, how do you get the foil to hold that embossed shape?
Oh, you know, that's a great question. How do I get the foil to hold the embossed shape? It just does. In fact, I've had more of an issue not accidentally marking it than I have having it hold it. So it's really, I guess I'm showing one now that has sort of an X shape or a plus shape in the middle of it. And this came from an electrical utility cover. I sat down on the sidewalk with a piece of foil I brought with me, and I had a gardening glove on my hand, basically, and just used my hand to create the impression, and it just stays. Yeah, I haven't had any issues with losing the form. I suppose if I really pushed on it or put weight on it, that would disappear. But I'd be curious to know about any explorations that you do, what you find. Thanks for asking that question. Okay, then there's the softer things, I guess. Yarn. I'm holding up some wool, some blue wool yarn that, gosh, so many applications for this. There's embroidery. I've done embroidery with bookbinding thread. And again, I think there's a piece in the bathroom right now at the Disability Cultural Center where there's embroidery, which, creates interesting shapes, but also forms texture on top of whatever surface you're embroidering. And in my case, it's embroidering paper with the thread. And then different ribbons. So I thought it would be fun just to bring a couple of examples. How many millions of different kinds of ribbons are there out there? But I have one that has metallic edges and is a little bit more, how would I describe this texture? It's a little bit rough, actually. It's also shimmery. And then I have a grosgrain ribbon that's yellow and has kind of a striped or ribbed texture to it and is more pliable than the shimmery one. So again, this is just showing things that I happen to have in my toolkit, but if you look around where you are, start to search for interesting fabrics. Fabrics. Here's some denim. Encouraging you to get creative with your own materials. Another great source of tactile materials and things that I also use for printmaking are all kinds of packing materials. I've got a foam shape here with a cutout kind of circular shape in the middle. Bubble wrap, it's one of my favorites here for bubble wrap. And then other kinds of packing materials. I'm holding up some zigzaggy small slices of cardboard or I guess brown craft paper that's used for packing objects. It makes kind of a rustling sound that also has a really interesting kind of jagged texture to it. and then different cardboards. I like to tear a smooth piece of cardboard to get the interior part, which often has more of this texture to it that's like, again, straight lines or ribbing that can be used nicely in contrast with the smooth areas. And various weights of vellum as I clear my workspace here. Various weights of paper. So there's vellum, which is more of a opaque, almost I don't know, plasticky feeling. It's smoother than copy paper in some ways. Handmade papers, wonderful for texture, and various weights of paper. And last but not least, whatever has ended up in the everything drawer at your house, which is, where all the random twist ties and rubber bands, earplugs, why not? Earplugs have a really cool texture to them. Very touchable. I've got some random binder clips in here, buttons, paper clips. So yeah, put those things together and see what we've got. Oh, that wasn't quite the last thing. We've also got another access tool. This kind of goes with the tape. This might be familiar to some of you. This is a Braille tape labeler. So it's possible to spin the dial on it to select a letter or a number in Braille. And then when you press the handle, eventually it produces a piece of tape with that Braille letter on it. I'm just repeating the letter L over and over here. And then you can cut. Ordinarily, I would be able to cut this quite easily and apply that to different pieces of artwork as well. I have some thoughts to share about using Braille as part of tactile art, which we can get to at the end if there's interest. But I do love a Braille tape labeler. All right. So those are some of the more available materials that you might find in your home nearby. And I think actually, Emily, I'm going to pause for a moment and see if there are any questions about anything I've gone through so far before I continue and start talking about the more specialized things.
There was a great comment just to make sure to share that you can often get this kind of supplies for free on like local buy nothing groups that can be treasure troves for these sorts of materials. There were lots of laughter emojis at your everything drawer. I guess we all have those and like the idea of having some fun art to make out of those types of supplies. Um,
Ah,
and Ev shared love embroidery. I want to use old elastic bands to embroider over to add a 3D component to my pieces.
ooh.
And a comment that the way that our video is framed with your mat and our interpreter makes it look like y'all are in the same place and that it's very sweet. Like you're just across the table from
Oh.
each other crafting.
Oh, that's great. I love those. Thank you. I wish
And
we
where
were.
And then one concrete question, where to purchase a Braille label maker?
Oh, I got mine from the San Francisco Lighthouse for the Blind store called Adaptations online. You may be able to get them somewhere else, but that's my go-to. Yeah.
And
Holly, what did I miss? Because my Google Calendar didn't remind me this was happening.
hi,
Did
Olga.
I
Thanks
did
for
I miss the
joining.
whole lecture part or what?
Oh, there's still plenty ahead, and this is being recorded, so you can go back and
Sorry.
watch what you missed. We've started with some materials, and Ray's gonna keep going, so you'll get some more content ahead. And there was one more comment in the chat about somebody leaving early. We will share the resources that are developed today, as well as the video. So plenty of chance to catch all this content ahead.
Great. Thank you, Emily and everyone. I love the Buy Nothing Groups idea as well. And there will be a couple of links for some of the materials I'm about to talk about, which Emily has generously offered to put in the chat for me. So those will be there. So I wanted to take some time to talk about more specialized things that I've used artistically in experimenting with how to make. It started as experimenting with how to make zines and comics tactile, and then it's just gotten huge from there. But specifically, this started when I was working on my memoir comic, Embodied, in, I guess it was 2022, and ongoing. So some of the examples I'll be showing you are from pages of that book. Many of the materials that I'll show you now have been designed as disability access tools that I'm using artistically. I think the other thing I wanted to remember to say is that the zines and books that I make tend to be one-of-a-kind small editions. So not easily, or small editions, so they're not easily reproduced, and they tend to be very labor intensive. So that tends to be another consideration for me in experimenting with these materials. Initially, I was working very hard on trying to find a tactile application for book arts that could be easily and inexpensively reproduced. And some of you may have heard me talk about that before. I continue to feel like our current technologies are not adequate for that task. And I do enjoy, making smaller editions of artwork. So again, as you experiment with these things on your own, I would be very curious to learn how that goes for you. So I wanted to start by talking about puffy paint. So some of you may have used this before. It's actually meant for fabric. This is an acrylic paint, and when I was practicing, I got it all over myself, so we'll see if I can avoid doing that now. It is a bit messy. I'm squeezing it out of the bottle now. You might have heard that. I'll hold it up to the camera. It comes in all kinds of colors. My favorite to use is black. I like the contrast. I've used white, yellow, red also. I don't know what the limits are on the colors of puffy paint, but I've just squeezed it out onto a piece of copy paper. Actually, it's a little bit thicker than copy paper, in the shape of a heart. And as you might be able to tell, it does give a little bit of texture there. It's raised depending on how you control the paint coming out of the nozzle. I've actually used this on sculpture as well. It seems pretty durable. I used it on sculpture and then did an exterior coating to make it even more so. But that was one of the very first things I tried. And I'm going to hold up a page from Embodied, which I just mentioned, where I was experimenting. Hopefully that's on screen in the correct place. Where I was experimenting with making parts of my drawing tactile using puffy paint. And so there's a picture of a hand holding a pen. The hand is drawn in micron black line ink. And the pen I drew in puffy paint, so partially in puffy paint. So it's actually raised up above the line of the hand. And as I run my finger over it, I can feel the line of the pen, somewhat recognizable as a pen, as well as a dot of ink that's come from the point of the pen that's raised up off the page. This was one of my, I'm not showing that at all. There we go. This was one of my first experiments in what would it be like to do Braille with puffy paint. This is way too big to actually be legible. And as I said, this is more of a one-of-a-kind rather than something where I could do multiple pages with Braille. But I do love puffy paint. All right, I'm going to set that aside so I get it all over the place. The next thing I tried was embossing tools. And as I was setting up, my embossing tool flew across the room and is now somewhere on vacation. I have no idea where it is, but it's here in my studio. So I won't be able to show you what it looks like. It's basically a small, maybe like 4 to 5 inch long pen-shaped object with metal ends, with balls, metal balls that can create different sized impressions into a piece of paper. And you could use it for lines as well. This is my maybe second attempt to create Braille on the cover of Embodied using the embossing tool. It's very hard to see on screen, but essentially I poked into the back of the paper, and that created raised dots on the front. So embossing tools. I'm going to go back for just a moment to show another example with puff paint where I was trying the same thing using the puff paint to try and make Braille dots. Okay. Early on in my exploration, somebody recommended a specific tool to me that is used for as an access tool for blind and low vision people to make tactile shapes and pictures, and it's called the Sensational Blackboard. And here I'll lean on Emily to put the link for that in the chat for those of you who are interested. It is, it's about the size, 8.5 by 11 sheet of rubber. It's smooth on one side so they can advertise. Let's see. There we go. The Sensational Blackboard, sensationalblackboard.com. And the rubber is exposed on the other side. And the idea with this is that you would place a piece of paper over the rubber side and then use a ballpoint pen like the one I'm searching for now. I knew I needed that ballpoint pen for something. I wonder if pencil will work. Let's try it. Okay. Live experimentation on art supplies. All right, so the idea is that you would draw a shape on one side. I'm drawing a circle. I'm drawing a heart next to the circle. And then, yeah, it sort of works. Works better with a ballpoint pen, but on the reverse side, you would get a raised shape of whatever was drawn on the back. That's impossible to see, I think. But trust me, as I run my fingers over this, I can feel the shape of a heart and feel the shape of a circle. So that's the Sensational Blackboard. So probably I'll be repeating myself here, but you can guess what my concern about that was. It was really only possible to make, it was very labor intensive. It was one book at a time, one page or drawing at a time, but it is kind of fun to play with just to explore which shapes are legible and appealing, and to do more free-form drawings on it that become tactile as you draw is pretty interesting. Around the same time, another access tool that was recommended to me was quick draw paper. I'll hold that up for you as well. And Emily will put that link in the chat. Is this upside down? There we go. Quick draw paper, which looks like this. It's a 8.5 by 11 sponge-like material. I actually suspect that it is a very compressed sponge. This comes from American Printing House for the Blind. And the idea is that as you apply water, it causes areas of the sponge to swell, making tactile shapes. And I'll show you an example. This is a little book that I made. I was trying to figure out how the inside is just copy paper and the outside is made from a sheet of sponge paper that I cut and sewed with bookbinding thread. The sponge paper itself is kind of this yellowish orange color, and the thread is also a very similar color, yellow orange. So I was trying to figure out how to contain the water. And you could see you might be able to see some experiments here. One where I just dabbed the water onto the sponge and it made a big blotch. Another one where I drew a heart with a red ballpoint pen. It's not actually much better. The water escaped the boundaries of the pen. I was kind of trying to create a reservoir here. The third one is a little bit better. I used a black ballpoint pen, but the heart is too small for that to actually be legible, meaning you can't tell it's a heart. It still feels like just a blob on the paper. Okay, so then I had a more successful, I think, attempt on the other side. And what I did for this was I used a very small screwdriver, and I essentially carved a heart shape into the quick draw paper, and I made the heart much bigger so it's more easily recognizable. So I discovered that size is relevant to how well I can recognize a shape through touch, right? And then I took a water brush. So this is a pen filled with water, which when I squeeze it, it releases water onto the page. And the little reservoir that I had created with my screwdriver contained the water more successfully. So now I have a one-of-a-kind book using quick draw paper with a heart on it. And I'll just show you if I were to squeeze water onto the sponge paper, how it works here. So it's I'm just squeezing water out and it's puffing up as I go. So it's a more uniform texture, right? We've got actually two primary textures here. One is the paper before water. The other is the paper after water. There's also moisture right now, or dampness, to the shape that I just created. And the one that I made a few days ago is dry. Okay. That's the quick draw paper. So a lot of this had to do with carving shapes or poking shapes into something, figuring out how to make shapes raised, right? Make them stick out. And so something that seemed obvious to me was that letterpress printing, some of you may have done, was another possibility. I'll just say it ended up being too complex and not durable enough and not affordable enough for me to use it with zines. But I decided, as we're going through these materials, see if a light background might work better for this, to share an example of a plate, an acrylic plate that I had printed when I was trying to figure out how to make my memoir comic embodied tactile. So this is a plastic sheet that has raised lines actually printed on it that would be used as a, I guess, template during letterpress printing, where paper would become, I can never remember as I'm speaking the difference between debossed and embossed, but one of those where it actually is kind of cut into the paper by the shape. Okay. And then the big one, where I finally arrived after all of this. I was very fortunate to meet a TVA, a teacher of visually impaired kids, who asked me if I knew about a technology called Swell paper. I had heard about it, but I didn't know how to find a place where I could experiment with it. And she very generously helped me with the first steps of that. So Swell paper or capsule paper is an access tool that's used to create raised lines. It requires a special paper and printer. So therefore, it's not readily available to most people. It does offer an option to create a design that can be reproduced in multiple tactile editions. And that's what I ended up using for embodied, which I'm holding up now. So this zine I've been showing in various iterations is the size of a letter-sized piece of paper folded 4 times. So 4¼ by 5½. It also unfolds in an accordion shape for all the different pages. This is kind of a messy copy of it for demonstration. And then on the interior, you unfold it, there's large print text, which is the story of the comic or the zine. And I think what is important to share about this, for me to share with you, is that it's a much more, I want to say, it has many more applications than I originally thought, even though I was really pleased to finally find it for this comic. And it offers many opportunities to explore. Actually, Emily, I think, was going to put into the chat for me, thank you, the 2 companies that sell the Swell printers and Swell paper. There are so many other things I want to say about this. I'm just thinking for a minute here. Something to say about this is that it's a double-sided paper, and I'll tell you a little bit about how it works. One side, and in this case, this is a good example because it shows where the text is basically the consistency of, copy paper, and it doesn't become raised. So there's no tactile element to this side other than what you would just feel if you touched a piece of plain copy paper. The other side is, I don't know what the technology is exactly, but it's almost like it's rubberized. And this is the side that becomes swollen or tactile, where you can get raised lines. It only works with printing, which is carbon-based, and where the black lines will swell and color will not. It won't work with pens or pencils that are not carbon-based. It will work with the laser printer, and that was where things really started taking off as I was experimenting with it. I'll show you a couple of examples of what I've done with that. And then I think I'm going to pause because I've been talking for a while, and we'll switch back to some questions and discussions. And I'll see if I've missed anything. Probably I have. Oh, actually, I figured out a way to move my Swell printer over into the display space. So I'm going to do that. How's that? There we go. So this is, maybe I'll turn it around a little bit. I might lose my cord. Whenever I'm trying to describe it, I say it's kind of the size of a large toaster. It's there are 2 different models, and this one is like, got it on top of a ruler right now. I think it's 20 inches by 5 inches by 5 inches, and it's got heating elements on top. There's an on-off switch and a dial to control the amount of heat. If there's interest, I could actually try to feed a piece of paper through this and show you how it works. I'm not going to do that right now. I am going to show you a couple of things that I used, other applications of Swell paper. So this is one of the types of photo montages, tactile photo montages that I have up at the Disability Cultural Center right now. This comes from photos of sidewalks that I took with the safety lines at the corner that when we're using a navigation cane in particular or just walking along, it will indicate that you've come to a traffic crossing or need to be particularly aware of sidewalk safety. And I've printed these photos onto the same swell paper that I used to make that zine. And the dark lines, the gray and black lines, are raised. And the yellow, gray, light gray, brown, or blue lines are not. So as I run my hands over this, it's a very subtle texture. I'm not sure that it's particularly legible unless there's context provided by the artist, but it is, for me at least, enjoyable to touch. And there's kind of this linear pattern that's set up as I run my hands across it. This one I just randomly picked out of my drawer as we were starting. This is a collage that I made recently. I drew in pencil, so you can use pencil and pen, shapes of poppies. I had a photo of some plants, poppies, that I used swell paper to make raised. And I've kind of put all these pieces together creatively using that same exact technology. I think it's on, the background is from a gel print that I made, which is very small amount of texture. Most of the texture is in the stronger line drawings. And here I would say the flowers are fairly legible, recognizable to touch as flowers. Other elements may be a little bit more abstract. Okay. Whew. That was a quick tour through what's in my cabinet and some of the materials that I've used. So thank you for hearing, listening, being here, witnessing all of that. And I'm going to see if there are any questions in our next 10 minutes where we might want to go next.
Great. I had a question from Sophie in the chat, but I'm just going to allow, if you'd rather ask your question aloud, you can raise your hand. So I'll pull somebody else. And if I don't see your hand pop up, I'll ask your question. Let's go to Olga first.
Yeah, so I don't know if we have time, but Saria joined late. I'm on spring break, summer break, so it's how school, it can be kind of hard to remember these, but can you just quickly show some of the tools that you showed earlier in the first half that I missed, if there's time?
As the moderator of this, I'm going to ask not to go back, Olga, just because we do have the video, but I can just kind of quickly summarize that the first start of the program was using materials that you're more likely to have around the house, like the little pads that go on the bottom of furniture or like raised puff sticker texture, things like that. But we'll make sure you get the recording link. Thanks. Julia.
Thank you so much. This has been amazing, and it's just gotten so many creative ideas. But I have a question about tactile art that could be shared remotely, partly because my own access needs are such that I'm often not in physical space with people. And so, it may just be that this is a case where it's conflicting access needs and it doesn't work, but I'm so curious about whether you have any experience or thoughts or ideas about, I've just been thinking a lot about how to send artistic care packages, so I'm often doing remote talks and work with artistry where I'm not physically in the space either. So do you have any thoughts about how to do some of what you were talking about with printing was really interesting to me. But yeah, any thoughts about the digital tactile or tactile across distance? I'd be really curious to know more.
Thank you, Julia. I love the question. Tactile across distance. I want to think about it more. The things that come to mind for me, first, I want to mention the work of another San Francisco artist, M. Elio, who created some tactile sculptural pieces, made them kind of I don't know if they would appreciate this description, but to me, they were like odd stuffed animals with various shapes and textures on them. that they distributed to different, to some galleries and nonprofit groups around town, and people could take them home with them for a period of time and then bring them back. And so they were shared out that way. Another thing that I love to do is postal exchange or mail exchange with people, where we're sending all kinds of artwork, including tactile stuff, by mail. You could find a tactile buddy and just, give yourselves different touchable challenges with that. And I had the sense I was going to forget the third one by the time I got there. Something you said inspired it. It's gone. But yeah, maybe this is a creative challenge and constraint that we can figure out together, how we can be connected through touch at a distance. Thanks for the question.
And I'm going to invite Sophie on, and I'm also going to give you the heads up, Rae, in case it's helpful to hear in advance that when you said, and maybe if people want to see a demo of the Swell printer, there was a strong, yes, please. So.
I was afraid of that. Yeah.
All right, welcome, Sophie.
Hey, thanks. Glad to be here. Have been such a joyous participant and recipient of all this DCC programming, and it's really cool to learn about different access needs that I don't consider every day. So really, this has been fun. My question that I put in the chat is literally, because I also kind of use this as an art appointment, which I do for my ADHD. I use Zooms for like body doubling, is I heard you say something about a lot of your art, your tactile art, being also accessibility items, devices, meeting an access need. And I was kind of curious what you think, and would you speak to kind of if there's a distinction between tactile art and, I guess the only word I could think of was like utilitarian. Because like, for example, I embellish masks and I'm working with lace right now. And so this is going to be, the person wanted it longer, but this is one that I made recently. And so this obviously has an element to it. It will touch their face in a tactile way, but it's a piece of PPE. So I was kind of, yeah. So let me rephrase my question, because I yap a lot. Talking about like the idea of tactile art versus utilitarian or access devices, and if you live more in the middle of that Venn diagram, or where you see them differing.
Yeah, thank you. I like to think I live in the middle there, and occasionally I also need to be reminded that they aren't mutually exclusive, and that it's important to me to honor the utility of our access tools, and also to consider that there's a part of disability aesthetics is the beauty of that utilitarian function, as well as other applications. So that's my in the moment response. Sophie, I don't know if that touched on what you're considering. I think we're thinking about this together, and yeah, I'm really interested to see how it goes as we, as a community, continue to hold those questions, and to not have it be about novelty for, I don't want to get on that soapbox right now, but yeah, not just about the novelty of the tools for people who don't use them for access, but also there is an educational purpose here, potentially. Yeah. That's all I'll say for now. So we have like 1 minute. Should I do a really fast Swell printer demo? What do you think, Emily? You're the moderator, so I put myself.
That is probably too fast to put that pressure on you. But I would instead say that the DCC has been playing around with the idea of a workshop where it's like, come check out our cool technology and stuff like a Cricut. And we pulled out the laminator once and everybody was getting in on it. So might just need to invite you back for a Swell demo some other time. And I want to thank everybody for this hour flew by, but it's just to show how many options there are, which I think is so cool because a lot of times it just, when you get people thinking, they think, how could it possibly be? These art pieces are visual. And to be able to give it this extra element with so many ideas and the invitation to play is just wonderful. Thank you all for being a part of today's program. We have so many more coming up that you can learn about at disabilityculturalcenter.org. We hope you join us, and apologies if we did not get to your questions, but more conversations ahead. Thank you all. And thank you, Rae.
Thank you, everyone.